Hello, I'm the Game Professor, and welcome to Games as Lit 101. I think it's pretty well established at this point that Nintendo isn't exactly an industry leader in empowering its female characters. Calm down, I'm not saying they're evil or that you have to be a sexist monster to enjoy Nintendo games, that's obviously not true. I'm not even saying this is a universal rule. Nintendo has a decent amount of powerful women in their games, but their two most beloved series seem obsessed with putting them in positions of powerlessness so a man can save them, and even when a central female character is given power, it tends to be a temporary condition that goes away the minute they actually show any degree of traditional femininity. Let's not even get into Metroid Other M here, that was beyond the freaking pale. But usually, Samus gets it pretty good in this regard. Peach and Zelda, on the other hand, rarely have any meaningful degree of agency. It exists mostly to be acted upon by the male hero and the male villain. Agency isn't even about making someone powerful or letting them do everything on their own. This is just about letting them have control over their lives and decisions. Nintendo isn't a bunch of evil misogynists or anything, but there are some unfortunate tropes they've made only the smallest steps to rectify. And speaking of those two flagship franchises, Nintendo recently released new entries in both of them, and they are so freaking fun. Breath of the Wild reinvents the Zelda formula in a wildly successful way, resulting in probably not my favorite Zelda game, but far and away the one I've had the most fun playing. And Super Mario Odyssey made a return to the large levels of 64 and Sunshine while expanding the whole star collecting idea to reward exploration and creativity at every turn. Both games are solid Game of the Year contenders and excellent additions to their respective series. And while neither do much to subvert the usual damsel in distress formula, they do take two very different approaches to the resolution of their main women's character arcs. Odyssey does it better. Like, significantly better. I never would have expected that, but it does. Okay, well that statement isn't without qualification. Odyssey does the typical Mario thing throughout most of the game, and Peach isn't presented with any degree of capability, independence, or any ability to do anything but stand near Bowser and beg Mario to save her. Zelda, on the other hand, is actually doing something of vital importance while you adventure around in Breath of the Wild. In fact, the game goes so far as to describe your mission not as saving her, but helping her. She's the one doing the important work, and you have to play support. It's a minor detail considering you're still doing all the stuff necessary to free her, but like I said, small steps. At least her absence is because she's doing something important, an idea that the series has had an on-again, off-again relationship with, but never really moved past. But what I'm wanting to talk about here is specifically the endings of these two games, because both of them do actually have something of a real character arc for Peach and Zelda, but while Breath of the Wild puts a lot more effort into it, it kind of sabotages itself at the end, whereas Odyssey actually does something kind of nice. Spoilers, obviously, I'm going to talk about the endings of both games. They're really good, you should definitely play them before watching. Breath of the Wild actually has a ton of cutscenes detailing Zelda's journey to realizing her power and stepping up to her responsibilities. It's a story of a young woman working to fulfill her potential and struggling with the weight of her position and duty. When things go really wrong, she finally realizes her potential and uses her authority to have Link preserved until he can recover, then uses her power to contain Calamity Ganon for 100 years, giving Link time to try and salvage their mission and defeat him for good. I don't think anyone's claiming this story is the most well-told, but in concept it's absolutely something I can get behind. A coming-of-age backstory for Princess Zelda, and a present story where I may be trying to strike the final blow, but ultimately this is her century-long battle to defeat Ganon. I'm totally down with that. So how does this resolve for her character?
I can no longer hear the voice inside the sword. I suppose it would make sense if my power had dwindled over the past 100 years. I'm surprised to admit it, but I can accept that.
That's right, all that about her being powerful and important, that was just a big, bad burden. Her attempts to take control of her life and affect the world for good were only getting in the way of her happiness, and she'll be much better off without that power so Link can do all the important work. I did not like this ending. Like so many of these stories, it's a perfectly legitimate character arc in its own right. Sometimes what a character wants isn't actually what would make them happiest, and there's something to be said for a story about someone realizing that their desires go deeper than they realized and accepting happiness with a different outcome than the one they had originally had in mind. But this game is not made in a vacuum. The Zelda series has a tendency to deprive Zelda of any meaningful agency, so to have a game that's specifically about her coming into her own, where even her absence is not because she's incapacitated by a villain, but because she's playing a vital role in taking down Ganon, was incredibly refreshing. Then this.
I can accept that.
After decades of saving helpless princesses, Nintendo definitely did not need a story about how it actually just really sucks for a woman to have all this power and agency. It's like the fantasy story equivalent of saying that the wage gap is good, actually, because a woman can only be happy if she's taking care of the kids and cooking for her husband. It just really rubbed me the wrong way, and it was very frustrating, which is why I actually found the ending of Super Mario Odyssey very refreshing in contrast. In many ways, Odyssey is the inverse of Breath of the Wild in its treatment of Princess Peach. She's completely powerless throughout the game as she's dragged around the world in preparation for Bowser to force her into a marriage. She's not given any real character development over the course of the game, just a few scenes where she worries about Mario. Not exactly progress. At least until the end. That is a Nintendo princess completely rejecting the affections of both her abuser and her savior. That is Princess Peach being so annoyed by their desperate advances that she simply chooses to walk away. Do you realize how big this is for these games? Nintendo's always been pretty coy about Mario and Peach's relationship, but the games have dropped hints that there is a relationship there. And the discourse surrounding the game has always had a major emphasis on wanting to see them get together. This is, of course, informed in part by the age-old idea that in saving her, Mario has somehow earned her affection, that he deserves to be with her because of all the effort he's put into saving her life. But obviously that's absurd. No one is owed a woman's affection. She doesn't owe him love or a kiss or anything else. She's a human being who can make her own choices and doesn't owe herself to the man who saved her. And in this game, she actually rejects wholesale the notion that she owes anything to either of the men in this scenario, and to top things off, travels the world with the little hat thing that was kidnapped alongside her. Princess Peach makes a decision for herself to essentially reclaim the experiences that her abuser put her through. Peach has been through something traumatic, and she responds to it once it's all over by rejecting the notion that she owes anyone anything for the experience and setting out to reclaim her agency by traveling the world. She even goes to Bowser's castle and comments on how this is the first time she's actually come here of her own volition. She's not just taking control of her own life, she's taking power away from the oppression that was previously forced upon her. And that is freaking awesome. Neither Breath of the Wild nor Super Mario Odyssey are perfect in this regard, not by a long shot. But they do end in very contrasting ways. Breath of the Wild by essentially negating the empowerment and agency it gave to Zelda, and Super Mario Odyssey by allowing Princess Peach to take control of her life and reclaim her experiences after it all happened. Had you asked me which of these two games would do which a year ago, I never would have guessed this is how it would turn out, but here we are, and I can certainly do with a whole lot more of Odyssey's approach to this in the future than Breath of the Wild's.